Welcome to
Beautiful.
Thoughts on Thursday. Reverend Miller.
And Stuart Holmes.
He's proud of his intro. Usually he's muttering a little bit, but today it was like
Under
woo!
my breath.
So welcome to Thoughts on Thursday as we continue in Lent. And for this Thoughts on Thursday, I'm going to be talking about the Ten Commandments and why we have them in worship. But Stuart and I have talked that Lent is this idea of growing in our faith and prayer and fasting and growing in our relationship with God. And so with that idea, it's really God's call on our life. We thought the next two Thoughts on Thursday that we would interview each other so that you would get a sense of each of our calls as minister and music director. So, you ready for that, Stuart?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh boy.
You remember that conversation? So, the Ten Commandments. At one point in time, if you went to a good Calvinistic church, Reformed church, Presbyterian church, Christian Reformed church, there would be the Ten Commandments every Sunday. Either before the confession or right after the confession. And the question is, why do we do the Ten Commandments in Reformed worship? And also the idea, if we are saved by grace alone, where do the Ten Commandments come into play? And so, for John Calvin, our preeminent theologian, he saw three uses of the law. And the first use was that the law mirrored to us our sinful nature, by giving us an example of this is what a godly person would look like with these Ten Commandments. And it mirrors to us wherever we may have sin to point out the idea of sin, which, that's why it's right by the prayer of confession, either before or after. We have it afterwards to remind us of our sinfulness and the confession and forgiveness we find in Jesus. The second use of the law, Calvin believed, was the Ten Commandments helped keep evil at bay for all of society. That's why in the United States, where Calvin actually influenced long after his death, that you would see in some state or local buildings, they'll have the Ten Commandments. It was the idea that the Ten Commandments gave a basis of what right and wrong was, and by having that, it kept evil at bay. In a sense, people saw that and said, okay, this is the way we should be. And the third was it revealed the path of freedom and holiness to those who desire to please God. So this was the path. After receiving grace and reconciliation, we see this is the relationship we're supposed to have with God through the Ten Commandments. Now, the Heidelberg Catechism, a wonderful catechism. Some people like the Westminster Catechism. And so, but the Heidelberg Catechism is broken in three parts, in essence. We can call it guilt, grace, and gratitude. It reveals our guilt, that we are saved by grace, and then gratitude is our living this world in grace. And in fact, the Ten Commandments in the Heidelberg Catechism are found in that third section of gratitude. And it does tell us that no Christian can fully follow the Ten Commandments. There'll be failings, but this reveals where we need to confess and find sin. Similar to that first part, but really the path of living a righteous life through grace. And so that's why, and prior to COVID, we would have the Ten Commandments once a month, and then we'd do the summary of the law, or maybe a passage from Micah, as a kind of the gift of the law, as a way of still having the law in there. Because, I mean, to read the Ten Commandments is a long thing, I guess. And so a lot of Reformed churches, you don't even see the law read anymore. we're getting back to making sure we have the 10 Commandments in just as a wonderful practice at least once a month. Back to, was it 2 weeks ago? Freedom in form. The idea of the Reformed liturgy is that there's some freedom, and also the idea that maybe you don't do everything every Sunday, but by bringing in different elements, you get a full picture of our faith and our worship of God. So, my thoughts on the 10 Commandments.
Wow. You know, I was trying to think while you were saying that about my Anglican upbringing. And with the exception of the obvious, which is I knew what the 10 Commandments were. I knew, I guess back when I was a youth, I was getting pretty close to being able to spout them. But I don't remember that being
Part of the
so
worship?
much as a part of the liturgy.
Okay.
And I could, of course, be wrong.
That doesn't happen too often.
Am I being wrong?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, well, isn't there a commandment that would refer back to that content? No. But the other thing I wanted to ask you was, isn't there I'm not finding the right word. In some of the other Protestant traditions, we're born with grace and not.
Well, so
Or we're.
So there's different. Every Christian believes in free will, and every Christian believes in God's providence. Every one. There's usually kind of a spectrum, right? So Wesleyans, coming out of
That's it. Yeah.
the Arminian tradition, they believe in free will over providence, so to speak. So my dad, who grew up a Methodist, was studying to be a Methodist minister, and then lost his faith and became an atheist and an agnostic and back to the church. In the Methodist church, you would call that backsliding. That's what you would call it, because in the Reformed church, we put providence in front of free will. Yes, we have free will, we have make choices, but God's saving grace is the first thing. And this is a simplistic answer to a very complicated question in the theology. There's been debates over and over that balance between free will and what we call predestination, but really God's providence.
Okay. That's why.
Because even Wesleyans believe in providence. They would say there's divine things, God's moving, and really would say that God gives us the ability to make that choice.
Okay.
So.
That's why I was stumbling.
Yeah.
For that. Ready for the music?
I'm ready for the music.
Ready for the music. Well,
you're just trying to up my time of speaking, so you don't always look like you're the.
So far, I'm winning.
Yes.
I'll give.
I'm going to say long-winded, but you're definitely the most winded with the organ. I mean, there's no way I can.
It's a winded instrument. What can I say? It can just go on forever and ever and ever without taking a breath. That
Organist and organ.
Yeah. Oh. So let's focus on Bach for a moment. His birthday was this past week, 330 some odd years, and I was thinking, well, maybe I should play a couple pieces that reflect his different approaches to creating music, and one of them was orchestral music. The little piece I was playing as the tape began this a few minutes ago was his air from an orchestral suite of
Sweet and street are different.
they are, and it just is a wonderful meditative and can cause hopefully the congregation to ponder about the 10 Commandments.
Okay.
or maybe ponder on how I flubbered through this. I don't know. It's a magnificent piece, and on the organ it is somewhat adopted because you don't have the flexibility of strings and full orchestra, but it comes off beautifully on this instrument. Postlude, The exact opposite. Bach wrote a number of fugues. This one is a fantastic fugue, and I wrote about it in the bulletin. Virgil Fox at Riverside
Fantastic
Church.
fugue.
Yeah, fantastic fugue. Wrote and said that you have to listen for the melody in the soprano, in the tenor voice. Wrong setting. And then it comes back in the alto voice, and then in the sopranos. And then Virgil Fox said, this is called the jig fugue for a reason. He says, when the fourth voice comes in, it's in the pedals. And if you watch carefully, the pedals are dancing. That wasn't very good. You can watch the jig come to fruition. So that is the postlude, a fun little piece to play, and represents perhaps the other side of Bach's magnificent creations.
Sounds wonderful. And we'll end with Joy, which will fit perfectly in the parable of the father with two sons.
That's true.
So,
welcome back to the fold.
yes.
Yep.
So, thanks for joining us on Thoughts on Thursday. Reverend Miller.
Stuart Holmes.
And we'll see you hopefully on Sunday, either on YouTube or Facebook, or here in person at 660 Glen Avenue. Thanks. Have a great day.